Welcome to the Business Focus podcast. Before we start, can we ask one thing? 74% of you that watch this channel frequently do not subscribe. If you've enjoyed our videos, please could you do me a favor and hit the subscribe button? It helps this channel more than you know, and the bigger the channel gets, the bigger the learning gets. Welcome to the Business Focus podcast. Jonathan Herps is the host of the Business Focus podcast. He is a strategic advisor, coach, and mentor to entrepreneurial business owners, CEOs, and senior executives. In this podcast, he chats with entrepreneurs, founders, and CEOs of scaling companies. It centers around their entrepreneurial journey so far and their aspirations for their companies.
Today, I've got Justin Wastnage. Is that how I pronounce your name, Justin? Wastnage. I'm sorry. Who's founder and CEO of Vloggi. So I've spelled Vloggi. Welcome, Justin.
Thank you. Good to be on here.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thanks for taking the time. But listen, why don't you start by telling us about what's Vloggi, how long have you been doing it, what does it do, and what's your role, please?
Yeah, sure. So look, the simplest way to describe it is a video submission management platform. And what that really means is it enables organizations, large and small, to gather user-generated clips or employee-generated clips, own the rights to them, and then compile them into sequences. So in some ways, as we see the rise of video, one of the things that's missing is actually getting the thousands or millions of clips of footage that you need to actually compile videos together into sequences. I came up with the idea about 5 years ago. I was working in tourism lobbying, so government relations in the tourism industry. I have a background before that in video production. In fact, I invented the term video blog. I was the first person to use it on YouTube in 2004, and always been interested in videos. And the problem really we saw then in the tourism industry about 5 years ago, was really they needed authentic video shot by real travelers, real visitors. And that was impossible to get at that time. You could only really get influencers that you had to pay for. So that was the concept. I built a prototype, and then we took it to market. And then, unfortunately, we had a great go-to-market plan, all based around travel and tourism, just when COVID hit.
Perfect. We'll come back to the COVID. So, tell me, who would be your core or your best customer?
The best customers are really those who see it as an ongoing tool. So as a lot of people use it for marketing campaigns, and that's the sort of short sugar hit. So maybe they run a promotion and get a few thousand video clips from their customers, but then they turn it off again. And whereas we're seeing a move now towards people actually leaving it on as ongoing customer feedback in that sense. And then internal communications. We actually, our fastest growing, the highest revenue customers are internal communications users. We have Qantas as a customer, PayPal, Amazon, and they're all using us for internal employee generated video rather than customer generated video.
So explain that to me a bit more. So suddenly you've got thousands of these videos. How are companies actually, or the government, tourism departments, how are they actually using it? Like it's left on? How does that work?
So the main benefit of user-generated video shot on mobile phones is that it is contextually rich. So it contains about 46 different data points. So all of those can be used to sort and to categorize and to contextualize those video clips. And what that means is actually once you have a large library, you can then compile them together based on location, based on theme, based on the product that's ordered, or based on some other things. So where we're sort of going now is down the AI path, really, of analyzing those videos even further. So like I said, there's 46 data points already contained within a video file, but actually you can double that by speech to text, and then analyzing the object in there, analyzing the sentiment, analyzing the audio signature. So a lot of the tools that we're about to bring out are AI add-ons, and really that gives businesses an enormous amount of data on each video clip, and then they can use them to. It depends on the workflow, but in the tourism sector, which we don't really play in much anymore, but in that sector, say the holy grail was, could you automatically produce us a highlights reel, the 5 best pubs in Mount Gambier? And I say Mount Gambier because our first paying customer was the South Australian Tourism Board. And the problem that they had was they said, look, we have endless high quality hero footage of all of the top attractions, so like Kangaroo Island, those sort of things, but we don't have any video of pubs in Mount Gambier. So really what they want is, could we build a database of user generated or supplier generated, or even the owners of this business, but generated footage like that sits in a vast library that can be called on whenever it's needed.
Okay. Now, so I'm going to deep dive a bit, given that I'm a technological numpty in some ways when it comes to video. So you talk about these data points. So we're recording a video now. What data points are there, and how do I find them?
So there's a lot of data points contained within an EXIF file. So this your viewers may be interested to know is recording in Zoom, which has a proprietary codec system behind it to hide a lot of the data points. But if you're dealing with mobile phone footage shot on common iPhone or Android, then it's things like the orientation, the size, the color depth, the time and date, how high you were. There's all that sort of stuff stored in the EXIF data that you can use. So even things like the color density and the color density compared with the pixel next to it tells you how sharp the image is. So you can filter by quality of image. In actual fact, we run all videos submitted through Vloggi go through an enhancer, which means that we upscale and sharpen and brighten videos and increase and normalize the audio. And we also, if somebody uploads a vertical video, we blur out the sides and pillar box it. And the reason why we do this is because if you're taking video from hundreds of different sources, hundreds of different devices, the resolution and the dimensions of each video clip is slightly different. So we standardize them, which means that our customers can then use any clip from their library with any other.
And do you help the customer? So I'm just thinking about uses for my people who are listening to us, CEOs, founders, etc. Do you help them sort? Like, let's say someone comes to you for the first time. What is, I'm just trying to come up with practical ideas and uses of Vloggi for a typical founder CEO, 8 to 100 staff. Can we focus there and just give me an idea of how you would help me market my business either internally or externally?
Look, I mean, clearly the most obvious use case is in customer videos, customer video testimonials, customer video, product videos, product reviews. So we always say there's a sort of rule of thumb that if you serve at least 1,000 customers a week, then you could easily get 250 customer videos in your library. So there's an uptake of about 0.5%. So about half of percent of all of your customers would actually submit a video. This depends on the incentive, but really what you want to focus on is nobody is going to record a video just speaking, saying, I think your product's great, unless you pay them. But they will record videos of how your product has changed their life. So you really want to focus on the emotion, and you want to focus on your customers actually deriving benefit and trying to draw out those stories from them. And that's a really, really powerful tool to use in marketing. So to give you an example, Jack's Tires, which obviously is larger than larger as a national chain than what you're talking about, but the individual franchisees would be your sort of. So they run very successful campaigns where they have channels on Facebook in which they post different video contests, which then are run through our system, where they get, for example, 4-wheel drive owners, show us your most daring uphill mud climb. And it's, the tires are almost incidental. I mean, the tires are obviously on the 4-wheel drives, but really it's tapping into that community. And they compile the best ones and every week post it back onto Facebook, which then grows that community. So really it's kind of self-generating. And what those 4-wheel drive owners love is seeing their videos being picked in the top 5 and replayed back onto that channel.
That makes total sense to me now. I was sort of trying to grapple with it, but I can really see how that works. Okay, let's get back to the questions, which is where it's supposed to be. So you mentioned the pandemic. We've all been through it. What actions did you take because of the pandemic that have stuck with the business going forward?
Well, as I said earlier, we had built this product, and the first go-to-market was really travel and tourism. And the difference being travel, other private companies within the tourism sector, and tourism is generally those government agencies that draw people to a destination. And we'd already found where the sweet spot was, which was travel agents going on free for meals. And we had lots of travel agents using us and paying for us, some tourism boards as well. And we had a database that we carefully curated, and we built the product, and it was all working. And then the pandemic hits. So really, we took that time and the obviously the government money, the what was it called, the JobKeeper, to retain all the staff, and we essentially rebuilt the product. So in reality, the product that we had at the time was an MVP, a minimal viable product. It worked, but if you looked inside the code base, it was kind of held together with sticky tape. So our CTO, Jeremy, he basically sat in his apartment in Bondi, for weeks and weeks and weeks, and rebuilt it. And as a result, it's very robust. It's very fast, very efficient, and doesn't break, which is great. So that was that. But then really what we had to do was we had to think, okay, well, this market is going to be dead for 2 years. Where else can we find markets? And this is where the first obvious use case was marketing. However, like I said, what we've now found is that marketing isn't necessarily the most lucrative market for us, in that marketing campaigns tend to be short-lived. And also there's competition out there. So you can run competitions on Instagram and things like that. And for brands where they need the stuff to be public, that's quite straightforward. But what we're kind of seeing now is that growth of almost corporate user-generated video. So how do people use employee-generated video, employee-sourced content to use in internal communications or external?
And what about you, Sam? If your CTO still living in the apartment, working out of the apartment, what have you done regarding, what does the business look like now?
No, only because he's moved. I mean, we're still fairly small, so we are raising money at the moment in order to scale up. So basically, essentially, what we built during COVID was what we consider a minimal marketable product, which was, this is a product that we can reliably take to market and people can self-serve and use themselves. And now we have 3,500 businesses using us, but with some big names, and most of the people who are now signing up are in the US. I mean, I started this morning with a call to Atlanta, Georgia, ended one yesterday with one in Toronto, Canada. And basically this need for authentic video from customers or from internally is very acutely felt in the US. And, like all trends, will come down to Australia eventually in 6 or 7 years. But we're spending most of our time in the US. So really what we're kind of raising money for now is to really take the product to the next level. So we know from conversations to, for example, Amazon, talked to them this week, Our contact there is based in Luxembourg, and he's come up with a whole bunch of product feature requests, in order to make this product more scalable. Similarly, I mean, we know the issue. We know what we need to build out for Qantas, for example, to make it used across their whole organization. So really where we're kind of going now is how do we turn this product that we have, which is a minimal marketable product and is used by small businesses, how can we turn that into an enterprise grade product? And that's really that's the next stage in our journey.
It's an interesting, I mean, there are lots of interesting challenges in there. Another one of my recently graduated clients, in fact, they're in a different space. It's a SaaS product focused on electrifying heavy vehicle fleets. But he got to the stage where the time zones just killed him, and he's just recently relocated himself and his family to San Diego, as an example. It's managing time zones and managing teams in time zones can become really quite daunting for small teams. So,
well, actually, we've just done 2 programs. We did the New South Wales Going Global program for B2B SaaS products exported to the US.
Yep.
I went to Texas as part of that, and then just followed it up with the Austrade San Francisco Accelerator, San Francisco Landing Pad Accelerator. So both of those are sort of steering us in the direction of having to base someone or in the US to really capitalize on that, because you're right, the time zones sort of people are quite generous with time zones. But for example, I mean, I got up this morning at 6:30 to do a call, and it was 4:30 their time in Georgia, and that kind of worked. But sometimes they want. I mean, I'm always answering questions in the middle of the night and stuff. So yeah, it does get a challenge.
So you've raised another really interesting point there that first time it's been raised on the podcast, even though we've done 85 of these now. For those that know me, I have a background as a CEO in internationally, and I did a lot of work with Austrade and the New South Wales Government Trade organisation. For anybody that's looking to go international, Austrade and each of the state governments have their own international trade office. They are unbelievably helpful you've just been through the training, you've introductions, helping with strategy. Highly recommend. If you're starting to think about an international strategy, first off, come and have a half an hour free chat with me, and I'll help. But then go and have a chat with the Austrades and the state trade offices. Yeah, most people don't know that the trade office, their states have offices offshore. LA, Shanghai, Beijing, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, etc. Singapore, India, and Europe, and they're really well connected. So it's
and of course, New South Wales was going to get one in New York, but I think that was kibosh, that idea.
I think that was a bit political, wasn't it? I think they do have one in LA from memory, and the teams are the teams they hire are really good. So and Victoria is an example, same, and Queensland, etc.
Actually, Victoria is doing a roadshow yesterday, so they're doing roadshows in Queensland and New South Wales. So Victoria is moving outside of its state in order to attract companies here in New South Wales and Queensland to relocate to Victoria with the promise of helping them export. So they're being quite aggressive in that.
Yeah, it's fascinating. But they're a great resource that not many people know about. And the other one I've got a lady called Cynthia Deeren, who was a predecessor of mine in a CEO role, has an international trade business that I'd be happy to refer you to as well.
Yeah.
So what do you think has been your biggest learning since you've become a business owner?
Look, I guess it's one thing having the idea. Really, the biggest challenge has been keeping the money flowing. there's a relentless cycle of trying to raise money from investors. And, I guess I think one of my biggest learnings would probably be that never to trust an investor until you see the money in the bank account, because there's been quite a lot of, false hope where people have said they're going to invest and then they don't. And if you're a technology business, you're always rated against big global American technology. Yeah, so people say, "Oh, why don't you have this feature? Why don't you have that?" Because they just expect the product to look exactly as Google's does, but with around 10,000 fewer developers. So that's a challenge. And of course, as maybe in your other 85 shows, you've covered this, but Australian investors are incredibly conservative. I also used to be an academic. I used to be a non-resident research fellow at the University of Sydney's US Studies Centre in the innovation and entrepreneurship stream. And really what we looked at there was how New South Wales, but Australia more generally, could copy some of the entrepreneurship and innovation that goes on in the US. And aside from the fact that there are technical barriers and there are different institutional impediments, one of the biggest things is that access to capital just doesn't exist here, because investors will only invest in a sure thing. There's no kind of risk taken from investors. There aren't really angels who like the idea. It all gets bogged down in having to provide reams and reams of financial forecasts, and it's just so. I think that's probably the biggest thing is that it is very, very hard to raise capital here.
There's a couple of things that come out of that. Daniel, who was the CEO I was referring to earlier, who's relocated to San Diego. One of the reasons he relocated was accessing capital, because the venture capital markets are so much more progressed in the US than here, which is the point you're making. But I suppose if we were summarizing what you just said, it's having enough cash to survive and thrive, and thinking ahead enough that you've got that cash runway in place to keep the business going. And if we talk about there's actually I've just got it here. I've been reviewing. There's a great book by a guy called Trey Taylor, Trey Taylor, and it's called "A CEO Only Does Three Things." And the three things a CEO should be doing is strategy, having the right people, in the business doing the right things, and having enough cash to pay for them. Yeah, I'd throw in technology, the awareness of technology, because that changes the business so much so quickly. But strategy, having the right people doing the right things, and having enough cash. So you've really highlighted absolutely absolutely what all business owners learn on the way.
Yeah.
So wait, when you think of the word successful, who comes to mind and why?
Actually, one of the guys I met in the US, who, amongst other things, said he would invest, but hasn't as of yet, is Farhad Mohit. Now, he actually founded, amongst other things, Flippergram, which was one of the apps that were bought by Byte, which was later turned into TikTok.
Okay.
Now, he's successful because what he gone on to do, actually, I mean, he said, I've got this ill-gotten gains, and really what I want to do is invest it back into, he's big into democracy tech. So he's actually founded this organization called Good Party, which is not actually a third party in the US, but it supports independent candidates and builds technology for independent candidates. And his point there was that the two big sides of politics in the US would be the same here. Actually, spend a lot on technology to actually identify, target, retarget, and market to potential voters. And this leaves independent candidates at a disadvantage. And I think that's a really good example of he had success, and then he wanted to use that money not necessarily to make more money, but to further the public good. And the reason I had a chat with him was because we have had all sorts of political campaigns, like the Australian Greens. We're talking to the Liberal Party at the moment. We were involved in the Labor campaign last time around. But in Canada, the New Democrats. In the US, the Democratic Party in Texas. Conservative politicians in the UK. So we have a sort of mix of politicians starting to use it, which is kind of where his interests in us lay. But I also think I think he exited his second, startup very successfully, and now is using that as a force for good.
So first time I've heard that name. So thank you. Are you a reader? Any books, business books, podcasts, business autobiographies you'd recommend?
Yeah. So I mean, a few. The book that I have finished recently is actually How the Future Works, which actually is written by the team at Slack. So it's a little bit pro Slack, and Slack is the answer to all your questions. But in between that, because I'm quite a futurist. In fact, I used to do presentations on the future of technology, the future of tourism, the future of aviation. And I remember I did the future of tourism presentation in 2005, and about 15 of the 20 things that I said would happen have happened. So I'm very interested in the future. So that's a good book. But then the other book, which actually may surprise your readers, because they probably get bombarded with adverts for it, is Sell Like Crazy by Sabra Subri, which again, you've got to take it with a grain of salt, and you've got to take into the fact that if you purchase it for $39, you will then be hounded by his team to it's a digital marketing agency. However, put that aside.
So this book, Sabri Subri is the founder of a digital marketing agency called King Kong.
Yes,
and he's just I just saw that he's starting on Shark Tank Australia as one of the sharks.
Yeah, and he's suppose you might say a divisive character, but not. I mean, however, the book itself is really sales and marketing 101. Exactly. And his tone is quite aggressive, and that's part of his character. But actually, you read the book chapter by chapter, and you can set up an entire sales and marketing campaign on your own, very effectively. So I'd recommend that one.
Sabri Subri, if you don't mind, we might just jump in a bit further. He's a fascinating character, and there's a lot of good lessons. Sales and marketing, number one. So if you were to go and look at my my website, scaleupgrowth.co, that the homepage is designed totally based on Sabri's teachings. And Justin, having read the book, you'll see it absolutely the moment you jump into that homepage. It is Sabri Subri written all over.
It's funny. So based on that, I made a whole new funnel with a shouty sort of video that starts, if you're not using customer video in your marketing, you're missing out on it. And with the whiteboard behind, with the maths, it was straight out of his playbook. And I think it's got 95,000 views on YouTube. Wow. Now, then the problem is actually that's a good lead magnet, but then probably some of the steps I need to look at a bit more. But yeah.
And the other thing about Sabri, he is a cracker example of one of the things I coach. Because one of the issues and the problems with a lot of entrepreneurs, and I would argue I'm one of them, is the shiny object syndrome. Keeping focus on that growth strategy can be very hard for entrepreneurs. And Sabri has a general manager who runs his business. So, he is the visionary for the business. He is the chief growth officer for the business. He's the one that builds these video marketing campaigns, writes the book, etc. But behind the scenes, he has a general manager that runs pretty much every single part of the business. And it's one of those things I coach a lot of my clients about is at what stage do you put an integrator, GM, COO, chief of staff, whatever you want to call the person, in behind you to build this scalable business. And I coach about I'm building a self-managing. I'm coaching clients to build a self-managing business, and within my own, I have a practice manager who really the things I do in my business now. I coach my clients, which I love. I build the IP, and I do these podcasts. But behind the scenes, I've got a whole team of people who have got much stronger strengths than me, managing my business. And it's interesting. Subway is a very good example of that, and King Kong's a very good example of that. So it's there's a lot of good lessons that comes out of it. Last question. Any last piece of advice or parting words for an entrepreneur out there or an aspiring entrepreneur?
Don't do it. No. Actually, funnily enough, I have this sort of list because I sort of think once this idea of user-generated video taking over the world, taking over business, is proved successful, and I'm a multi-billionaire. Not only will I also do like Fahad and give away to good causes, but I'll also write a book entitled "How Not to Start the Next Unicorn." I keep on writing down bits of advice. One of it is, don't do it in Australia, as previously discussed. Don't do it if you have a family. Don't do it if you're not young. But I guess the main thing would be actually, and those are all a bit glib, but it's really everything takes a lot longer than you expect. So that old adage of you take a timeline and double it, and double the amount of money it would take, and that's maybe true, and maybe in Australia that's maybe triple. So everything takes a long time because of the access to capital, because of the access to talent. So a lot of technology startup businesses in Australia are caught in this trap of there are government incentives to develop the IP onshore, but yet onshore developers are much more expensive and in scarce resource, which then means you have to run this gauntlet of getting some stuff developed overseas, which is hard to manage and hard to trust the people you're offshoring to. So everything just takes a lot longer and takes a lot more money than you would imagine.
Yeah, it's a very good point. That's one of the case studies I use is Apple and Steve Jobs and Starbucks. And Steve Jobs has this cracker quote. He's got lots of them. One of them is everything takes it's amazing how long it takes for a brilliant idea to happen. And there's I've got a slide I use where it shows Apple the first 25 years, and it's sort of 0 to 9,000 staff. At which point they launched the iPhone. It took them 25 years to launch the iPhone. At which point the business skyrocketed to hundreds of thousands of staff.
They always say that it takes a very long time to become an overnight success.
Correct, and that was the point Jobs was making. 25 years to become an overnight success, and as you say, the access to the resources, and going back to that Trey Taylor point, strategy, the right people and the right cash, because you need more of it, more of all of it.
Yeah.
Justin, people want to get in touch with you, we'll have in the show notes and also on the outro slide all of your contact details. So and we can see how powerful video is. Obviously Justin's a lot further ahead than I am, but just the lessons that are coming out of this podcast.
Yeah, so clearly the website is vloggi.com. For those people who are interested in investing, we actually do have a crowdfunding round open at the moment on Market, on market.com.au, and type in Vloggi and you'll find us. And then also for your readers, we have a 55% off your first year package, which includes success calls with me, includes a professionally designed video template for them. So that is, the link is probably too long to give you, but that link will be in the show notes underneath this.
Perfect. Thanks so much.
Not a problem. Thank you.
I look forward to seeing you next time you come down to Barrel.
Will do.
Good job.
If you are hearing this message, you've listened to the entire episode, and for that, we want to thank you from the bottom of our hearts. We hope you enjoyed this new episode, and if you did, please leave us a review on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify, or wherever you watch/listen. Please share this episode with others who may be interested in this topic. If you want to be a guest on the podcast, please send an email to admin@scaleupgrowth.co. Put "Be a guest" in the subject line and tell me a little about yourself. If you want to gauge where your business growth potential is and identify where the biggest opportunities in your business lie, or where the key needs that you need to concentrate on right now are, take our assessment where you will receive personalized advice for improvement. It's quick and free. Go to scaleupgrowth.scoreapp.com. If you would like to work with me one-to-one, I love coaching and get the best outcomes that way. Send me an email to jonathan@scaleupgrowth.co and put one-to-one in the heading. Tell me a bit about your business and let's see how we can apply a great strategy for your business. So that's it for this week. Tune in next time for more great learnings from a scaling entrepreneur.